Welcome to another Bible time. This is the Thursday edition, and we're continuing our way through the book of Psalms. And we are learning so many helpful and practical things, and we will continue to do that today as we look at Psalm 78 and 79. Psalm 78 tells us the purpose for this psalm. It clearly is spelled out. It is to tell of God's faithfulness throughout Israel's history and to pass that on to the next generations. Verses 3 and 4 say, "Things that we have heard and known that our fathers have told us, we will not hide them from their children, but tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might and the wonders that he has done." And so the purpose is to pass on, talk about what God has done and how verse 5 says, "He established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers to teach their children." And then his children are expected to pass it on to their children. Verse 6, "That the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and arise and tell them to their children." See, this is how it works. This is kind of like discipleship as you pass on what God has done from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. There's some real practical instruction there for parents. Are you passing on to your children the great things of God with the plan so that they will tell their children and it'll keep getting passed on and passed on? Is that how you're thinking about things in your family? That's what we should do. And the purpose here is so that, verse 7, so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. That's the goal. So that they would place their hope in God, just like you did, and that they would not forget the works of God, that they would keep his commandments. That's the goal. That's what we're aiming for. And so then it goes into a lengthy, this is a lengthy psalm. It goes into a lengthy discussion of God's faithfulness to a consistently rebellious people. It talks about the great works of God, not the great works of the people of Israel. And it walks them through the wilderness. It talks about the freedom from Egypt, and it talks about them coming into the promised land and all the great things that God has done, despite the fact that the people were, for the most part, rebellious. And then it ends there at the end of the psalm, verses 67 through 72. You hear about how he chose the tribe of Judah, and he placed Mount Zion as the place for his temple, his throne, and then he chose David. And so it's talking about not only the previous works, but now the current works and how they affect the future, because what that is pointing to, Judah, Mount Zion, David, is the coming Messiah. And so this is a great encouragement to parents to pass on to your children the great works of God. Not pass on, hey, do this, don't do that, not passing on a form of morality, but passing on to them the greatness of God so that your children would place their hope in him and then follow his commandments. That's great instruction for parents, and I trust that will encourage you. Now, Psalm 79 is talking about a time when things aren't going well for Israel, and it's appealing to God to deliver them for his name's sake. That's an important thing to remember. They're getting judged. The people are getting judged, and it implies there that they deserved it. In verse 5 it says, "How long, O Lord, will you be angry forever? Will your jealousy burn like fire?" And so implied there is the fact that they deserved the judgment that they're experiencing. And so the call is for deliverance, but it's not deliverance for our sake, for our benefit, for our relief. It's for God's sake. It's do this for the sake of your inheritance, for the sake of your holy temple, for the sake of your servants, for the sake of your faithfulness. It's all related to God. And verse 9 talks about to do it for the glory of your name and to do it for your name's sake. Not for our name's sake. We deserve what we're getting. But we're asking for deliverance based on your name's sake, your glory, for the sake of your glory. And we're asking you to do it in your great power. And we're doing it because these enemies are taunting you. Ultimately, God, they're taunting you. So we're asking you to act for the sake of your name. And that's a great way to approach God. That's a great way to bring your prayers to God, to ask him to act for his name's sake, asking him to do what he has promised to do rather than just asking him to do what we want him to do. And so that really focuses our time of prayer. And there's assurance here at the end, verse 13, but we, your people, the sheep of your pasture, will give thanks to you forever. From generation to generation, we will recount your praise. That's my prayer for Believers Fellowship, that from generation to generation, our church and our families would be places that are singing the praises of our great God. I trust that encourages you here on this Thursday, and we'll see you tomorrow for more Bible time.